I now present to you Mr. and Mrs. Richard Buck Filipowski.
Experiencing something in the present day that is a trigger to something that is very emotionally charged for us. So now we have become even more disconnected from the reality of what actually is.
The new dream, like a thunderstorm in our brain, and its electrical strikes through our synaptic skies to the earth of our being, creates a chemical cascade in our body that prepares our body for conquest, achievement, a relishing experience emotionally. But we would have no conquest. Indeed, we would have no relishment if we had not first had that hologram and those chemicals that made us, or rather changed us, from being fearful entities into fearless entities after a dream. The frontal lobe is the crowning achievement of the human brain. Frontal lobe. This frontal lobe allows us a distinguishedness to change our minds.
Through the workings of the nervous system and the particular way that it implements quantum effects. Very distinct, specific way, not general, not fuzzy, not imprecise. That it absolutely does open the door for free will being a possibility that does not violate modern scientific tenets, and that's consistent to a certain extent with people's subjective impression that we do have free will.
What separates us from all other species is the ratio of our frontal lobe to the rest of the brain. The frontal lobe is an area of the brain that's responsible for firm intention, for decision making, for regulating behavior, for inspiration. It is the seat of what causes us to take information from our environment and process it and store it in our brain to make decisions or choices that are different than the decisions and choices that we've made in the past. The brain is made up of tiny nerve cells called neurons. These neurons have tiny branches that reach out and connect to other neurons to form a neural net. Each place where they connect is integrated into a thought or a memory. Now, the brain builds up all its concepts by the law of associative memory. For example, ideas, thoughts, and feelings are all constructed and interconnected in this neural net, and all have a possible relationship with one another. The concept and the feeling of love, for instance, is stored in this vast neural net. But we build the concept of love from many other different ideas. Some people have love connected to disappointment. When they think about love, they experience the memory of pain, sorrow, anger, and even rage. Rage may be linked to hurt, which may be linked to a specific person, which then is connected back to love.
Every observation can be looked upon as a quantum measurement. This quantum measurement produces memory. We always perceive something after reflection in the mirror of memory. It is this reflection in the mirror of memory that gives us that sense of I-ness, who I am.
The brain does not know the difference between what it sees in its environment and what it remembers, because the same specific neural nets are then firing. We know physiologically that nerve cells that fire together wire together. If you practice something over and over again, those nerve cells have a long-term relationship. If you get angry on a daily basis, if you get frustrated on a daily basis, if you suffer on a daily basis, if you give reasons for the victimization in your life, you're rewiring and reintegrating that neural net on a daily basis, and that neural net now has a long-term relationship with all those other nerve cells called an identity. We also know that nerve cells that don't fire together no longer wire together. They lose their long-term relationship because every time we interrupt the thought process that produces a chemical response in the body, every time we interrupt it, those nerve cells that are connected to each other start breaking the long-term relationship. If we practice our mental rehearsal and our skill in being able to do it will show that certain brain circuits will grow as a result of our effort. It'll get easier to do, in other words. If we accept that idea, then it will allow us to go back the next day and do it with more certainty and with more acceptance. That in itself is no different than praying. You see, there's no religious text that says thought doesn't matter. There's no religious text that doesn't say your prayer and your intention shouldn't be answered by God. But explaining how that happens is what quantum physics and the observer is all about. But still, when we can make thought more real than anything else, our brain is designed to do that. The frontal lobe, with its enormous space, is the altar in which we place a thought. And it gives us the permission to hold the thought for an extended period of time, and it lowers the volume to the external stimuli. We lose track of time and space. That's the moment we're stepping into the quantum field. That's the moment that now we're making thought more real than anything else. We are physically, chemically, emotional human beings. That's not a bad thing. It only becomes a limitation when we keep accessing those same emotions and those same attitudes on a daily basis and go nowhere in terms of our change or evolution in our life.
How can we say that we have lived fully every day? By simply experiencing the same emotions that we're addicted to every day. What we're actually saying is, I have to reconfirm who I am, and my personality is, I have to do this, I have to go here, I have to be that. A master is quite a different cat. It is one that sees the day as an opportunity in time to create avenues of reality and emotions that are unborn, of realities that are unborn, that the day becomes a fertilization of infinite tomorrows.
There's a part of the brain called the hypothalamus. And the hypothalamus is like a little mini factory, and it is a place that assembles certain chemicals that match certain emotions that we experience. Those particular chemicals are called peptides. They're small chain amino acid sequences. The body's basically a carbon unit that makes about 20 different amino acids all together to formulate its physical structure. In the hypothalamus, we take small chain proteins called peptides, and we assemble them into certain neuropeptides or neurohormones that match the emotional states that we experience on a daily basis. So there's chemicals for anger, and there's chemicals for sadness, and there's chemicals for victimization, there's chemicals for lust. There's a chemical that matches every emotional state that we experience. And the moment that we experience that emotional state in our body or in our brain, that hypothalamus will immediately assemble the peptide that then releases it through the pituitary into the bloodstream. The moment it makes it into the bloodstream, it finds its way to different centers or different parts of the body. Now, every single cell in the body has these receptors on the outside.
And one cell can have thousands of receptors studying its surface, kind of opening up to the outside world. And when a peptide docks on a cell, it literally, like a key going into a lock, sits on the receptor surface and attaches to it and kind of moves the receptor, and kind of like a doorbell buzzing, sends a signal into the cell.
It's party time!
What happens in adulthood is that most of us who've had our glitches along the way are operating in an emotionally detached place, or we're operating as if today were yesterday.
What is it?
Mixed.
Change in itself means then that we have to abandon our old self. It means that we have to leave behind our identity for a few moments and begin to speculate who we could be. To change means modifying our behavior enough so that it's permanent.
Our experiences color what we know. So there is no completely objective appraisal of anything, because our appraisal of everything has to do with our previous experiences and our emotions. Everything has an emotional weighting to it.
We've gone from emotions being these spiritual, immaterial things to things, they're not even things, to actual molecules with molecular weights and peptides with sequences and structures.
Science knows now that the hypothalamus makes neuropeptides, and those neuropeptides are strong chemicals.
Well, here's the story of the peptide in the cell. The peptides find the receptors and dock onto them and stay attached. Then they come off, and then they can come back on again. And while they're there, they are changing the cell. A receptor that has a peptide sitting in it sets off a whole cascade of biochemical events, some of which changes the nucleus of the cell. Each cell is definitely alive, and each cell has a consciousness, particularly if we define consciousness as the point of view of an observer. There is always the perspective of the cell. The cell knows where it is, the cell knows where it's going, the cell knows what proteins it's making, the cell knows whether it's about to divide or whether it's in a program to stop dividing. In fact, the cell is the smallest unit of consciousness in the body.
I'm hungry.
The cells are yelling up to the brain saying, "Hungry! We haven't gotten our fix today." And it's going to start sending impressions to the brain, and the brain is going to start to formulate imagery. It's going to sound like voices in our head.
I'm hungry.
To think of a reason why we should be depressed.
Hungry.
Think of a reason why we should be confused. Think of a reason for our own suffering. And the body is going to be telling the brain that it's not getting its chemical needs met. And so the brain will then activate and start going to our past situations and flashing pictures to our frontal lobe.
Oh yeah! We've commandeered an entire serving plant! Yeah! Keep it coming! Keep it coming! Oh yeah!
Well, my definition of an addiction is something really simple. Something that you can't stop. We bring to ourselves situations that will fulfill the biochemical craving of the cells of our body by creating situations that meet our chemical need.
It always happens to me. Why?
So my definition really means that if you can't control your emotional state, you must be addicted to it. We're in completely new territory in our brain. And because we're in completely new territory, we're rewiring the brain, literally reconnecting to a new concept. Then ultimately, it changes us from the inside out. If I change my mind, will I change my choices? If I change my choices, will my life change? Why can't I change? What am I addicted to? What will I lose that I'm chemically attached to? And what person, place, thing, time, or event that I'm chemically attached to that I don't want to lose because I may have to experience the chemical withdrawal from that. Hence the human drama.
The day should be the sunrise. It should be the beginning of great thought.
I wake up in the morning and I consciously create my day the way I want it to happen. Now sometimes, because my mind is examining all the things that I need to get done, it takes me a little bit to settle down and get to the point of where I'm actually intentionally creating my day. But here's the thing, when I create my day, and out of nowhere, little things happen that are so unexplainable, I know that they are the process or the result of my creation. And the more I do that, the more I build a neural net in my brain that I accept that that's possible. It gives me the power and the incentive to do it the next day.
And we all create our own realities. And we do that because we are the observer. We are each the own observer of our own reality. And each of our individual consciousnesses creates our own individual reality in the most amazing way. My son, Evan, the physicist, says, you know, it's an additive thing. I mean, if I'm holding one reality and someone else is holding another reality, I mean, it's the Super Bowl this afternoon. And the reality that the Eagles are holding is a different reality than what the Patriots are holding. And only one of those realities are going to be the real reality. So there's some additive, and there are interference patterns.
Well, I think if we keep quantum physics and the understanding very simple for the layperson, that our observation has a direct effect on our world. I think if we keep it very simple, then people can get about the business of beginning to practice the skill of observation. See, the subatomic world responds to our observation, but the average person loses their attention span every 6 to 10 seconds per minute. So that doesn't leave a lot of room for our attention span. So how can the very large respond to someone who doesn't have the ability to even focus and concentrate? Maybe we're just poor observers. Maybe we haven't mastered the skill of observation, and maybe it is a skill. And maybe we're so addicted to the external world and so addicted to the stimulus and response to the external world that the brain is beginning to work out of response instead of out of creation. If we're given the proper knowledge and the proper understanding and given the proper instruction, we should begin to see measurable feedback in our life. If you make the effort to sit down and design a new life, and you make it the most important thing, and you spend time every day feeding it like a gardener feeds a seed, you will produce fruit.
We are running the holodeck. We are collectively, it's there, it has such flexibility that anything you can imagine it will create. And you learn, I mean, your intention causes this thing to materialize once you're conscious enough.
Yes, so